Hello and welcome. I'm William from the Brilin Functional Medicine Centre, and the purpose of this video is I'm interviewing Simon. Simon is on his cancer journey at the moment, and the big question is how will the new proposed therapeutics and products bill affect him? And in fact, if this bill was passed before his cancer journey roughly 8 months ago, would he still be here today? That's an important question. Thank you very much, Simon, for coming in and speaking with me. I recall the first time you come in, you had a treatment. Now, you've got esophagus cancer, and I'll let you explain that, but you had a treatment and you claimed that there was quite a significant pain reduction and you're able to swallow better. After the second treatment, you sort of indicated you went sort of more from soups to eating steak. And it seems over the last sort of 6 to 8 months that we've seen you, you're actually doing pretty well. So what are your thoughts about this therapeutics products? But would you, if that was passed 6 to 8 months ago, how would that affect your journey so far?
This month is the months when, according to the advice I had from the oncology department, that I'll be carted off in a wooden box. And so I feel at the present time the collation of all the supplementations, the work that I've done through you, and where I've got to has been of great help. At the vitamin C clinic that I've been to, I've had 8-week courses at 500 mils twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. Fortunately, in my journalism days, I'd read a lot about alternative complementary things that you could do to support conventional cancer treatment. And this is why I ended up in the Brilin Clinic, having read up to my surprise that your wherewithal and technology here is invaluable. And how I came across the Biotron Light that you've got here, the Swiss certified one, which is used in hospitals around the world. My first introduction to the Brilin Clinic was lying down flat with the lights all shining on my tumour. And I went home and had my lunch, which consisted of steak at that time, tiny little portions, and then I found I could swallow much better after this treatment. So I had a larger portion and it went down much better than the day before. So there was only one thing I could put that down to, and that was through the Biotron Swiss-made light product that you've got at the Brilin Clinic.
And we also put on top there as well, we had like a localized hypothermia type technology as well. So there's a couple of technologies that we put on there.
Yes. So with the marriage between what good comes out of the Brilin Clinic, and I depend upon it enormously, and the supplementation is very important. I can go a little bit further on supplementation. There is a village in the Himalayas where the Hunzas live, and they have an average age of well over 100. In fact, some of them, the villagers, are playing soccer at 100 years old. Why? Well, the lifestyle is one thing. It's vastly different to the Western lifestyle. But the other thing is the glacial milk they drink. The water that comes down from the mountains, and if you hold that up to the light, you can see sediment at the bottom of the glass, which is minerals. And then they get the minerals from their water, but in actual fact they get the minerals twice because they irrigate their crops with it as well. And so I feel there's a great message from the Dr. Linus Paulings of this world, a wonderful man, lived into his 90s. His famous quote, "Every sickness, every ailment, every disease can be traced back to a mineral deficiency." It is so true, but it's got left behind with orthodox medicine and buried. And you can't really blame the medical establishment either, because the problem that exists today is that there's not much by way of peer-reviewed studies with supplements. There's been a lot with vitamin C. Some of it's been sponsored by drug companies with deliberately lower amounts of, in terms of the dosages, so that the end result is not going to come out all that favourably. But there has been some excellent results, and there are some wonderful people, nutritionists about, who can help in that regard with the choice of vitamins that you should have with the various health conditions. So I think that supplementation is so vital, and it really is worrying to me to see that they've even got on the list some of the things you can buy naturally off the shelf. The products are quite diverse. you go to your doctor and you ask them, well, should I be taking vitamin C? And then my doctor, to my amazement, was very honest with me. He said, well, Simon, I've only ever had 2 lectures on nutrition at med school. So for those who are seeking advice, they would do well to look around. And there's some wonderful nutritionists about in New Zealand. Frances Pitsillis springs to mind in Auckland. She's often on the radio waves. She'll talk to you about all kinds of product in the supplement range that can help. If this is vulnerable to a bill being passed in Parliament, it is of severe concern to me, and I hope that your listeners will rally around and fill out the forms at government before, I think it's March the 15th. Am I correct with that, William?
I think it might be March the 5th now, but
Okay.
We'll have the details in the description. Yeah. So what message do you want to give the government? You know, considering your journey and what you've done, if that was taken away from you, what message do you have from the government?
Well, I hope that the government is seeking advice from nutritionists and not necessarily from doctors who are not qualified to really comment on it, because the qualifications in the medical fraternity are quite diverse. There are doctors out there with properly qualified nutritional background as well as the orthodox background. They would be the right ones to talk to. But equally, I would think they should be talking to professional specialists and nutritionists to get advice before they form any opinion on the public's behalf in New Zealand. And I hope there is an outcry on it if nothing takes place. But when you have some of the turkeys that are up there making judgments on our behalf, it worries me that they'll get bulldozed over it with all sorts of medical opinion coming from different angles, which may or may not have some accuracy to it.
The bill is, when you start reading the bill, it's like it's all for your safety. All these restrictions are all for your safety. Of the 5 days a week that you come to Brilin, are we compromising your health? Are we snake oil salespeople?
Certainly not. I mean, you've got so many diverse avenues here, including your scan facilities, your food advice, that you can put people directly in touch with where they need to be in touch, where they may before be blissfully unaware that they could do certain things like that. The technology I happen to have read about extensively in books that you've got here is extremely helpful and plays a leading role in, or has done, in getting my health as fit as it is today.
If that was passed 6 to 8 months ago, how would that affect your journey so far?
I would be alarmed. It is an apprehension to me because I've grown up with a supplementation. My father was a very successful farmer, in fact a Nuffield scholar, and one of the first things he always used to look out for is stock health. And I remember him telling me one day, see that ewe in the paddock out there? It needs some selenium. It could stand up, it would stagger and fall down again. So I went out and gave the ewe a shot of selenium, and within an hour it was out munching grass again. So since that period, I have shown an active interest through my publishing and reporting days to interview various people in the sector, in particular Dr. Cliff McCruther, who was a well-known veterinary surgeon in West Melton, who used to get a lot of their stock well with selenium and supplementations and the importance of it. There's a great shortage of it in the New Zealand soils. It is anti-cancer, and it is very good as a supplement, which I take daily. You can't take much of it, but the average daily allowance here is 150 mcgs per day. In America it's about 200, but with my cancer I take twice that. 150 in the morning, 150 mcgs in the evening.
And so do you think that if the Therapeutics products bill prevented you from having selenium, that would be a problem?
Well, it certainly would, because the lack of selenium in New Zealand is well known. In fact, to prove the point, and I was actually somewhat cynical about it, I sent a hair clipping up to the Hills Laboratory in Hamilton to have my selenium count measured in my body, and to my dismay, out of 3 levels, low, medium and high, I was registering below low. in terms of the selenium count in my body, which alerted to me I must supplement. It also caused me to interview a local farmer in Ashburton who grew a lot of wheat. What was he doing to get selenium back into the soil, because it's missing in the soil? And he said, well, matter of fact, Simon, I've just been interviewing some of the farmers locally. We had a meeting about it especially, and I got shot down in flames because the cost of putting the selenium into the drill mechanism with the fertilizer was cost prohibitive. So the farming community turned that down because of costs. So I supplement for that reason. And I have a lot of other supplements here which I can't talk to you about, but you can see vitamin D3 is another vital one. This is my selenium count one there. I take daily and I depend upon them enormously. And in fact, I can go as far as saying that the great Dr. Linus Pauling couldn't be more correct. Every sickness, every ailment, every disease can be traced back to a mineral deficiency. And he was a two-time Nobel laureate, studied vitamin C all of his life, found that you could reverse heart disease with vitamin C with the correct measurement. Average daily allowance for him was 3,000 mcgs of that. Who gets that these days? And all of that adds up over time.
There's no doubt that previous bills have diluted a lot of supplements. Like, every doctor knows that we need a minimum of 5 to 10,000 international units of vitamin D3 a day, but in New Zealand here they don't allow any more than 1,000 per day.
Well, I take 10,000.
Right.
And I have to get it sent in.
And that would be a minimum, I would believe, for you. So it's not just the supplements, how else would you be impacted? Why don't you tell us a little bit about, you can just only if you want to.
Well, it's interesting. It's a word of warning for those who have acid reflux. Now, I was blissfully unaware of how dangerous acid reflux is. I would just naturally turn for a quickies, go down to the supermarket, come back, and it would sort the problem out. But the real way of dealing with that is it should have been with Lozec, which I got wind of and prescribed for that off and on. But I was not ever told by GPs, and I had several of them during my lifetime, that I needed to stay on that type of product to keep that at bay. So my cancer has been caused, according to my oncologist, by acid reflux. And that's a sensation of your digestive juice coming up to your throat. Well, sometimes when you're sleeping at night, it'll congregate in your throat. So where I've got my cancer is where it has been congregating over the years. And so the next thing I found is I went off to my doctor to get a prescription because I was off to Australia to see family. And as I was walking out the door, I said, by the way, Doc, I'm having a bit of trouble swallowing. Can you help me? And he said, yes. He said, let's have a look. I can't see anything. He said, you probably need an endoscope. And that was of June of last year when they did an endoscope on me and discovered the throat cancer there. And during that, I had a remarkable meeting with a mother and daughter who was on a trial drug in America called AVM 0703 in Seattle, which is on stage 2 clinical trials in America. And they had obtained that under compassionate grounds and have been using it for the daughter for the past 6 months very successfully for her kidney cancer. And her kidney cancer has, I believe, contracted by 30% since she's been on it. So it is actually doing a good job. When I interviewed her, the mother, I discovered that she had come from Melbourne and had a very critical role in the COVID management. At very high levels, she was mixing with very scientists and a number of other very important medical people. And one of the scientists mentioned this drug that I'm now on that is helping me enormously, AVM 0703 from Seattle. It's called AVM Biotechnology. They're on phase 2 FDA clinical trials with this drug and having some wonderful results. What it does, it's an old 60s drug which they've removed all the derivatives around it to make the drug stronger. So it activates your stem cells and they then go out as killer cancer cells and hunt them down and start killing them. And I was getting these burning sensations about 24 hours later in my chest and in my throat, and I queried them about it, and they said, well, that is a good sign. That is a sign of your cancer dying.
While I'm at it, we'll make perfectly clear that we don't take any credit for your journey. You've done all that yourself. We don't cure cancer here at the Brilin Clinic.
No.
And people heal their own bodies. And what you've done is you've done a lot of due diligence, you've done a lot of research. Everything that you've done is because you've had personal conviction about what you should have done. And that, I think, tops everything if you've got personal conviction.
And indeed to remain positive, which is very important. But this drug that I'm on has gone through official channels. Now, the interesting thing is, what does my oncologist say about this? Well, of course, my oncology department didn't know anything much at all about this drug. So how can they go out and advise anybody about it? They can't, because it's in a peer-reviewed status, and to support the medical paternity, there's no way they can turn around and actually advocate it for anyone, even though it's at stage 2 trials in America. So I heard in the grapevine that this was doing a lot of good, and then I got even more interested in this company because who was supporting it? And largely it's clinicians, and they have a good gut feel about things generally. So I thought it's the worst that's likely to happen is that nothing will happen, but it's worth trying. So I'd chemoed myself out with a drug, by the way, that had no more than a 5% to 10% success rate. So that's what I was up against as the main choice of my throat cancer. With an intravenous feed every 3 weeks, followed by oral drugs for the 3 weeks leading up to the next intravenous feed. They upped the ante on me on the 2nd week, which was fine. I got into the 3rd week and then I started to fold. I got physically quite drained. I wasn't keeping my food down, and I became seriously dehydrated. So that's when I was carted off to Christchurch Hospital, where it took 9 days for me to pull myself out of a patch after being on a 24-hour drip to get me right again. But they were absolutely wonderful in there, and I had the good fortune of meeting an oncologist there who hadn't had as much work about on Sunday and spent at least an hour with me going through issues which they sometimes don't like talking about, like vitamin C. And I said, I'm looking out the window there to the Otago Medical University, Christchurch, where there is a brilliant woman there, and her name, Professor Margaret Visses, has done such wonderful work on vitamin C, even enough to go up and talk about it to Parliament. To the health side. And again, she came back in sort of, I believe, a muted mode, because there's not much they could do about all this wonderful research she has done, reversing cancers in some cases with vitamin C, high-dose vitamin C. Not all cancers, but some cancers. Well, to get this admission from the oncologist was a little bit difficult, but he opened up a little bit and said that he'd had staff across there to talk to Professor Visses, and he admitted that vitamin C had played quite an important role.
Intravenous vitamin C has been proven to work really, really well, and that's, of course, is now in jeopardy if this bill passes.
It pulled me out of my patch.
Yeah.
Literally, immediately. Some people take 6 months to recover from chemo. I was up and walking around the park within 3 weeks. Yeah. So it served a wonderful role in that respect.
And I think what the good thing here, and what everyone needs to know, is that you chose these things. You know, you chose your research, and you didn't have a government to choose for you.
Well, that's true, but medicine is full of professional jealousy. Supplementation is in the same similar sort of game. Everyone likes preserving their patch, and they're trained into it, and so they are naturally protective to it. So there's nothing wrong with that, but at the end of the day, it's a matter of thinking outside the square, which what I've tried to do, to complement all of the wonderful work that mainstream does do, and does it very productively. I can think of antibiotics. What a wonderful penicillin, for goodness sake, a magic bullet. What about smallpox? A tremendous breakthrough in smallpox with vaccines. So there's some great success stories attached to it. And so I'm a believer of across the board complementary alternative medicine, and the government should be behind it in every respect, because there's nothing better than preventative medicine. Go back to those Hundas. They don't have a chemist shop down the road. How do they live to 100 for? With careful management and protective management for their food intake and what they drink. They're fortunate to have it all on their back doorstep.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say to conclude?
To thank you and your team at Brilin, particularly for the wise words that you've given to me leading up to where I've got. I'm very happy coming to here, even while I'm taking this American drug, which has turned me around substantially. I still see the need of the importance to be here, even enough to buy one of your products from you, the Brilin Biotron Hyperlight, the Swiss one, which is remarkable. I train that on my tumours each night, and in the morning I go down, in the evening I go down to my chest, and it's just sitting by my bed. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Pretty much everybody I've had with, and by the way, we're not making any claims here, but everybody we've had with esophagus or throat cancer, and I do like a 10-minute treatment, there's always a noticeable difference in being able to swallow, because it's an anti-inflammatory device. And also, what we know about cancer now is that cancer thrives in a low voltage cell, and so anything energetic will recharge the cell. Even going out and earthing in the sun with your bare foot recharges your cells. Having a positive mindset increases the vibration, which recharges the mitochondria in your cells. So we can do a lot of simple things for free that can help us on the journey to better health.
Indeed, and this is what people will reap from you when they come to see you. There are so many avenues that you've pointed out on health. It gets confusing. Most people say, we'll go down and see what the doctor's got to say. It's the first port of call. And in fact, a lot of people hang on what doctors say, but they shouldn't. They should use their doctor for what they can get and know what is going to be good for them, and then basically know their health conditions. But if there's a problem outside, then they shouldn't be at all frightened to seek advice from professionals. There's plenty about. Some wonderful nutritionists about who really know their stuff and can get you well as well. So I see it as a way of collating health, the way I've approached it, all of the expertise married together to assist in one's own lifestyle. I've had a straight run to here because of my supplementation. You mentioned inflammation. Well, turmeric is another thing I take, and I take high doses of it because it's anti-inflammatory. Quercetin is another product that I take, also allergy-wise and asthma that I have from time to time. It's great for that. Each supplement's had a different role. Of selenium I've mentioned, but you can get it out of Brazil nuts or almonds if you don't want to take selenium supplementation. But for those who are having food these days, I worry because you go to the supermarket, I don't know whether it's been hydroponically grown, what minerals are in there. If you go down to Marshlands Road, perhaps to buy some organic food, what guarantees do you have that the food has got, that vegetable has got the mineral content that you want because the soil's been turned over? There is a guarantee for buying organic food. You would hope that it's got no chemical spray on it.
Which is carcinogenic. Well, thank you very much, Simon. I really appreciate your time with us. And we'll have all the links in the description below. And if you've got any questions, please ask and leave us a comment and share this video. Thank you very much for watching.